I think everyone has had that one anime that got lost in one way or another due to timing. Sometimes you see something at the wrong time, or perhaps it's just not possible for you to enjoy the show itself due to circumstances around it. This exact situation occurred in mid-2015 with a number of shows for me, to be fair, but this one especially was a big problem. At this point, I was flooded with anime from the same genre, that is, I was watching a borderline unhealthy amount of slice of life anime. For some reason, every show I was shown, every anime I was recommended, everything I tried to watch ended up being a slice of life. Sure, I enjoyed some of them, but after what felt like the 1000th slice of life anime I had begun to watch, I began to grow somewhat bitter towards anime in general. I realize now that this was only my fault, that if I decided to jump into some other genres or tried finding anime myself, this wouldn't have been an issue at all. Regardless, it was such a huge issue at the time that even shows I enjoyed like Haruhi were beginning to sour in my eyes, though thankfully I've been able to reconcile with that one. By far the biggest mistake I had made was dropping a show by the name of Nichijou. This was in the height of the issue itself, just before a certain anime came along and completely changed my perspective on anime. I enjoyed it a decent amount and found it pretty hilarious. That, however, was not enough to evade the souring that almost every anime at the time was enduring. After about 9 episodes, I dropped Nichijou. I gave up on watching the show because I just couldn't enjoy it at the time. This would be the end of my relationship with Nichijou and my most regretted decision in regards to anime. Or at least it would have been. Recently, I've gotten into a habit of listening to anime music in my spare time. One set of openings I would always return to was the Nichijou openings, which almost taunted me every time I listened. I knew what I had done, I knew I hadn't finished it, but I was avoiding it out of some sort of stupid fear of disliking it. One night, while laying in my bed, however, I had an epiphany, a realization of sorts. Almost as if it was a sign, I listened to the first opening while images of Nichijou flashed through my head. It was that moment that I flung my headphones off, decided to stop putting it off, and dived headfirst back into Nichijou. I was initially worried, to be honest. I'd grown quite a bit as an anime fan during the passing years, so I had no clue what I would think of the anime upon revisiting it. After the opening played, and the first scenes began to play, I began to realize the error of my ways. One of the things I tend to prioritize above all else when it comes to enjoying an anime is the aspect of unpredictability. If an anime can catch me off guard in a beneficial way, I tend to not only enjoy it more, but continue to think about it long after. This is a common theme among all of my favorite anime, and Nichijou uses the unpredictability factor in a way I don't often see. Upon starting an episode, there is virtually no way to predict what will occur, what it will focus on, or really even who the show will follow in each section. Any scene can lead to any result, and can have any kind of interaction possible. Occasionally something ridiculous could happen, such as the sudden appearance of a person wearing a bear costume only to chase one of the main characters, or perhaps the show will choose to dramatize normal everyday situations to make them seem crazy. Regardless of the gag or the focus, these scenes would stick in my mind long after, which doesn't happen all that often. Slice of life shows, for example, will often leave me with a fuzzy recollection of the show itself. With this one though, it's never the case. I can recall almost every scene down to the minute details because every one is crafted in a way that goes beyond what normal comedy anime tend to achieve. It also helps that the show will not only shift its focus decently often, but it does so effortlessly with no detriment to the show itself. Nichijou is one of the few shows that can utilize a diverse cast of characters as the main focus and not suffer from it. This may be in part due to the more comedy-focused nature of the show itself, but it goes farther than that. Regardless of the character each clip follows, the scenes are always interesting and extremely memorable for one reason or another. When I see Haruna, for example, I'm immediately able to recall the bizarre scenes involving passed-out students and flowing noodles that aren't exactly what you'd expect. This is just one minor character in a subset of characters that all give me similar feelings. This isn't even mentioning the main cast themselves, which despite the almost bizarre nature and insane gags around them, managed to be surprisingly believable. Yuko and Mio are a set of friends that I could generally see in real life. Yuko is a bit of an idiot, tends to put off things to a degree where I don't think it's even safe, and literally panics when the situation seems utterly ridiculous. Despite this, she's a good person at heart, and regardless of what ends up happening, it's hard not to root for her. Mio tends to overreact in ways that wouldn't be expected, is responsible but can oftentimes make stupid decisions, and will oftentimes butt heads with Yuko due to their clear differences. Despite these issues, however, their friendship feels genuine, and because of this, it's hard not to feel involved yourself. It almost gives off the impression that you're right alongside them dealing with whatever nonsensical event comes up. Mai is pretty much the biggest troll, but you never get the idea that she's doing it to be mean-spirited. Instead, it feels like she's just having some fun messing with her friends, and truthfully, I have a friend in real life that acts almost exactly the same way. And these are the characters that are generally shown within the confines of smaller gags. Somehow, they've managed to make a set of characters that, if written in any other way, could have been nothing more than gags. Alongside this, the slower portions that focus on Nano and the Professor feel genuinely pleasant. The characters are written so well that it's hard not to cheer them on. I haven't seen many anime in general, especially comedy anime, that can manage to do this with such a level of sincerity. They aren't just part of some overly funny joke, they are characters in and of themselves that feel completely independent of themselves. I think that if a character is to be considered strong, they need to be entertaining even if they were to be taken out of the show's general tone. Had Nichijou been a completely different show, I genuinely think I'd still enjoy the characters themselves at the very least. The openings themselves are also so brilliantly made because they are able to convey the tone of the story itself in a short minute and a half. With how many openings that feel wholly unrepresentative of the show it comes from, it's refreshing to watch an opening that isn't just fitting, it's basically a mini version of the show itself. In fact, the art plays to the same ideal, changing styles on a literally scene-by-scene basis. This is one of the few cases that I feel like the art transcends just being good art, and actually benefits the tone of the series. No matter the scene, the style will likely be changed to fit the tone of the scene itself, and has no issue going to literal extremes to help portray the intensity. This is one of the few cases where I think the aesthetics transcend just being of high quality, and are instead used to benefit the show overall. It's commendable in a way I've never really seen, and really helps the series itself become extremely memorable. Part of the reason why I think the show stands out so well is because the way in which it portrays the many gags, unlike a decent amount of comedy nowadays, Nichijou varies up the timing and delivery of each joke, making it borderline impossible to predict not only what, but when as well. Sometimes the joke is almost immediately going from 0 to 100 in a matter of moments, and yet the very next scene may take several minutes to get to the gag itself. Unlike most other comedy where the jokes become a mishmash of repetitive bores, these jokes will keep you on your feet during the entire run of the anime itself. The show never feels like it's dragging its feet, or like it's repeating the same stuff over and over, and this is despite the fact that the show itself literally reuses gags on occasion. This is because the anime can keep an element of unpredictability with its comedy that many other shows wish they could replicate. The only way I could ever get tired of the show itself is when it would overwhelm me, but this was a guarantee regardless. With the kind of rapid-fire pace Nichijou has, it's borderline impossible for it to avoid this pitfall. Regardless of this, however, the show managed to remain strong throughout its run. Looking back, I'm not sure whether I regret waiting on Nichijou or not. At the time I first watched it, my mind was so clouded that there was no way I'd appreciate it to the same level I do now. Chances are, I would have enjoyed it but disregarded it shortly after. I could have missed it entirely. That's one of the most frustrating parts of anime in general. So many shows are released that it becomes borderline impossible to keep up with all of them now. A show could literally be the best thing you would ever watch, but whether it's due to poor timing or maybe just not being aware of it entirely, it may never be experienced. That's why this decision to rewatch the show might have been one of the best I've ever made, at least in regards to anime. If I hadn't decided to take the plunge, I would have missed out on a show that, to be truthful, is one of the best ones I've ever seen. All of the brilliant gags, all of the well-written characters, all of the extremely memorable scenes, every bit of what Nichijou Is would be but a faint memory from a time where I was beginning to get out of anime. The saddest part about the show is that it was a financial failure in Japan. Despite its genius, it was never able to attain the success it needed, and thus this might be the end of Nichijou in general. It's almost depressing to realize that we may never see something of this same level of comedy writing again, and all because it was a failure. I guess that makes Nichijou a unique experience in and of itself though. In its short 26 episode run, the show managed to accomplish something most comedies never manage to. It's sad that we may never see anything related to this series again, but that just makes what we got feel even sweeter. I'd much rather see the show end on a high note than see the show manage to live to see it destroy itself. So if you haven't figured it out by now, I really love Nichijou, and I hope you give it a try. There's not much else like it, and I'm almost jealous of the people who might get to experience this masterpiece for the first time. Give it a chance because there's nothing else out there that's like it.